Okay, so thus far we have created our first database, and the database that we created is collecting certain pieces of information. I'm going to bring up my little mouse pointer program here to make it easier. I could show you what we're looking at. So we created this database with a set of fields. We had first name, last name, age, email address, and favorite color. And we had originally started by passing around that sheet of paper and filling it out, and we recognized it was kind of complex, right? So the next thing I think we did in class was we actually played around with the layout of this record. The view that we're in here right now, if you recall, is sorry about that. The view that we're in right now is called form view, and form view basically just shows one record at a time, so that we can look at information about a person or an item or whatever at one thing on our screen at a time, keep from distracting ourselves. So we can, move through those different records, and we'll see the numbers up here changing as we click through them. We can see that we have a total of 4 records. Right now we're on record number 3, Harry Fondue, and so yeah, that's one nice way we can look at some of our information. Now, the other thing we looked at was we looked at these other views that if we click on the table view, we could see all of our records if we're showing all of them. We could see all of our records, sort of like in an Excel spreadsheet kind of view. We could click on this little icon here and choose from how we sort it. You could sort it by value list. We talk about creating those too. So this is another way that we can just view all of this same information. So the other thing is we also discussed was creating a value list, I believe, up here in the manage file manage value lists. And we created a value list of favorite colors, I think is what we called it. So we can do blue, red, green, yellow, purple, whatever it might be. Okay. So after we created that value list, we went into layout mode, this mode where we can make some adjustments to how we see things. And I'm going to use Command L just because it's nice and quick. When I type Command L, it's going to switch me over to this layout mode where I can move things around. But I chose my field for favorite color, and then I used the inspector palette over here on the right to choose the data tab. When I choose the data tab, it allows me to go in and change some things about the fields that I have selected. So you'll notice this has a box around it, and I go over to control style, and I can change the different ways in which this particular field will behave for me when I'm in browse mode, when I'm browsing things. All right, so I'm going to do a drop down list, and then the next question was, well, what values are we choosing from? What do we want to limit our users to? Well, we want to limit them to the favorite colors choice list that we had created. Okay, so now if we go back into browse mode, we'll note that if we click on any of these records, their favorite color field, then we'll have all the choices that we just entered in there. Now, there are ways you can add like an other, where you can give people the option to type in something else, but for right now we're talking about making those limitations. All right, so that's just a quick recap of what we've done already. Now, the next step in this, I think, is looking at different ways we can view our information. So we can look at these one records at a time. We've talked about going into this table view, sort of this Excel spreadsheet view. There's another form or style that we can use to look at things, and that is called the list view. If I click list view here, what you're going to see is not much change really from the record view, but you'll notice that if I scroll, I can actually see the records kind of in this endless scroll thing of all the records in my particular database, right? The problem is there's a lot of wasted space in here. We really can't see everything easily. It's just not really easy to deal with in this mode, right? So if I go back to record mode, even though I can see, well, there's a whole lot of wasted space in here. The record, there isn't that much information that I really need a full screen like this. Well, not important at the moment. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to create a new layout. In other words, a new way in which we can see the same information, right? So you'll notice here up at the top of the page that we have this layout and an old colon, and it's showing you that the layout we're looking at is called My First Database, which really isn't all that descriptive for us. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to actually change the name of this layout. So this layout is just showing a record, right? One record at a time. So we're going to go into layout mode. I'm going to turn on my, let's see if I can do it real quick. Well, maybe not. So what we're going to do is we're going to, is that mouse pose there, I think? Yes, it is. I'm going to turn on my keystrokes. Yes, that's what I'm going to do. All right. So I go back into my database here, and I'm wanting to change the name of this layout to something a little more meaningful. So I go Command L, and that brings up my layout mode, right? This allows me to edit the look and feel of things. And if I go up here at the top of the page, you'll see that everything kind of changes. This new layout / report. Then it shows the layout name, My First Database. Then there's this little pencil. It's an edit pencil, basically. It allows us to modify the layout name or printing, a lot of different options. So when I'm in layout mode, I can then click on this edit button, and it brings up this dialog box for me. There's some general stuff here, general, views, printing, script, triggers. We're going to focus right now on the general. And we're going to change the layout name here from First Database, which is not very descriptive, to Record View, right? I'm going to leave everything else the same, and I'm going to click OK. Okay? So now, if I go back into browse mode, Command B, you'll see that it's changed from My First Database to Record View. Okay? So that just gives us a way in which we can easily identify what layout we're peeking at. Now, I want to create a layout that shows a list of my students or my list of my people or whatever documentation it is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into layout mode, Command L, and I'm going to use this button up here that says New Layout Report or Report. Right? So I click that button, show you up here. Click that button here, and you'll see that now I have a little process I need to go through. My First Database is the name of our database. Layout name is Layout 3, which is not very descriptive. Let's call it List View, right? Whoops, typo there, sorry. Right? Now, the next question I need to kind of answer for myself is that, well, is this primarily something I'm going to view on the computer? Do I want to set it up for like an iPad or an iPhone? Or am I planning on printing something out? For the moment, we're going to choose computer. We'll get into some of those other settings later on. We'll choose computer. And when we choose computer now, you'll see that there are a couple of familiar things here. There's form, list, and table. Those three views we've kind of seen before. And the fourth one, report. That's one we've not talked about, but that's a fairly complicated one. We're going to leave that one for another day. But the one we want to choose, we're creating a view that lists all of our information, or all of our students, whatever it might be. So I'm going to select list, and then with list selected here, I'm going to then click the word finish, right? Now, you'll notice, oops, sorry, you'll notice that things have changed here. So you'll notice up here where it says layout, it's changed it to the words list view. It's created a new layout, a new way we can look at information. If I click on that, you'll see we also have record view. We also have a second list view, which we'll delete here in just a second. But this is the one we want to work with for the moment. And what you'll see on the left-hand side when you're in layout mode is you will see all of the field names that have been created, all the fields that we've created, some that were magically created for us. But you'll see first name, last name, age, email address, and favorite color. Okay? So these are all things that we can click and drag and drop onto our layout. You'll notice here that we have some things like top navigation. This space up here is like the top of the page that will be consistent throughout all things you see. Body, which is where we are going to see our fields. And then finally, the footer. And the footer could be things like, your page number, a lot of different things you can place down there. But that's also information that tends not to change from record to record. Right? So let's say we want to see just a list of the student names from our database. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click first name, and I'm going to press my shift key and click last name. So now these two are highlighted. I'm going to click and drag them over here, and then you'll see there's a little ghost faded version of them. I'm going to click and drop it, and you'll see that because I have them all selected, if I click, I can drag and move them wherever I want. Problem is, this doesn't really help me a whole lot because it's kind of stacking the fields on top of each other. In fact, if I go into browse mode, you'll see it really does a really strange thing. And it's like last name, last name, last name. What the heck is going on here? So the reason is because I have this field up here, first name, is stuck in my navigation section. Here's the body of the list, and then down here, that's the footer. So it's really, really going to do some wonky things. So what I'm going to do is click and drag so that I can highlight all of those things. I'm just going to press the delete key. Now remember we talked about this on last class, that if you delete a field from a layout view, you're in layout mode, and you click on a field and hit delete, it doesn't get rid of the information. It just means you can't see the information in that given layout when you go to browse mode. Okay? Well, what we want to note is that if I select these two fields again, if I go down to the lower, but just below it, you'll see that I have some other preferences that are related to dragging things. This is drag preferences. So field placement right now is showing that it's going to stack them vertically. But if I click this button here, it's going to place the fields horizontally when I drag it to my layout. Right? So that's the first setting. The second thing I want to think about is, well, where do I want the label? The label that's going to show me first name, last name. Well, right now, by default, it's going to keep it to the left of the field. That's not terribly pretty. So if I click that and try it, you'll see what happens. So I click over here. Notice when I drag that it gives me this box now that goes across the screen. If I drop it, now what you'll see, if I go into my list view, it's a little better than before, right? So I got all these names here, but I got first name, first name, first name, first name, last name. It's a little obnoxious. Would make much more sense if I can get that to show up here one time and then names below it. Okay, so let's go back to layout mode. Command L. I'm gonna just select all of these things and hit delete. I'm going to change one setting down here. I already have it in horizontal field placement, right? And I'm going to do this so that places the field label above the field when I drag it, okay? So I'm going to do first name, shift key to select two things in a row, like that. And then I click and drag and drop it here. Right now, before I click anywhere else, while I still have all these things selected, see these little boxes, I'm going to just use my arrow key to adjust it ever so slightly. Okay? Now, if I go into browse mode, things should look a little better for me. Okay? So it's showing my first name in one column, my last name in one column. Okay? So let's go back into layout mode. Let's just do some tweaks real quick. I'm going to click first name here, and I'm going to shift and click last name so both of them are selected. And then I'm going to make some changes to my styling just to pretty it up a little bit. Notice over here on the right hand side we have this couple little buttons we can turn on. If we click this, it's going to show our formatting bar. So if I click that, I get all these happy little things here. right? So with these two field names highlighted or selected, I can now do some things like make it bold. I could also change the color. Let's do something kind of wild. Whee. No, that doesn't work too well. Light blue doesn't work very well. Let's go right now. So I've just now created this list, and I've adjusted my headers, if you will, for the columns to look a little nicer. I can also do some things like resize the fields because I don't need that much space, and I can click and click two items and move them over, kind of just pretty things up a little bit. Go back into browse mode and we can see our effects. Okay. Now what happens if I want to go back to the record itself? So if I want to see a record of Frida Chopina, I can always go up here, layout, and go to record view. And that goes right to Frida Chopina. Right? If I'm going to go back to my list view, click, do it like that. Right? So these are the, some basic layout things that I can do with FileMaker, and allow me to do some cool things. Right? So I'm going to go back into layout mode here. Let's say, well, I really want to add the age, and or let's say I just want to do email address and favorite color. I want to add those two things. I'm going to use my shift click trick. Make sure I have my labels set to show above, and then my field placement is going to be horizontal. So just click and drag and drop. Okay. Now you'll notice a little formatting thing here, that since we changed the formatting in our last name first name labels, that it doesn't match up now with the labels that we have, the favorite color and email address labels that we have. That's actually pretty easy to fix. If we click on last name and then we go to edit, we have this thing called copy object style. In other words, it's going to look at whatever object you've selected and copy the formatting for it, right? So in this case, it's bold and it's white. So if I do copy object style, and then I click on the email address, the label that I want to change, I can go back up to edit and do paste object style. And you'll notice now that last name and email address are both the same, right? Now I can do the same thing for favorite color, but I'm going to undo that, and I'm going to show you real quick. So I go here, I click on the style that I want to copy, and I select copy object style. Then I'm going to click email address, press my shift key, which allows me to click more than one object. So I have two objects selected, and then I'm going to, paste object style? Should let me do that. Oh my goodness. Let's just check here. Oh. It should have let me do that. Let me object style. Sorry, friends. Copy object style. Should allow me to paste object style. Oh, you little stinker. I think I may have discovered a bug. Yes, I think I did. Well, I can do it one at a time, but that's just not very user-friendly, is it? All right. Paste object style. Yeah, should have allowed me to do it, but I'm not sure why it didn't. Okay. Last thing that I want to talk about in the formatting area is that notice that the email address and favorite color labels are not quite on the same horizontal line here, right? So if I click and drag, let's see if I can do this real quick. That's not going to do it for me. You can see that these aren't quite lined up with each other. But if I click and drag so that all of these are highlighted, what I can do is I can use my arrange function in the menu bar, and I can align things by bottom edges, for example. So now you'll see all of these moved to line up their bottom edges. Okay? Boom. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Now, Last thing we're going to do here is we're actually going to give our layout a name. And the way we're going to do that is, there's a lot of different ways, but one way to do it is to use your text tool at the top. And we select the text tool and we click in here, and now we're able to name it. List view of students, right? Again, with that selected, of course, we can bold it, we can underline it, italicize, we can change the color, we can change the font size, a lot of different things. We can click and move it around, we can center it, all sorts of things. So now when we go into browse mode, we can see that we have this layout saved with this information. All right, so you can have fun with that, making things nice and pretty. The next step in this is that we're going to create some buttons, and the buttons are going to allow us to move from one layout to another layout. Okay, so how do you do that? Well, you start in layout mode, Command L. And what we're going to do is we're going to use the little button creator. So I'm going to click here at the top of the screen, click on button, and you'll notice now that I have a little crosshairs. And if I click and drag the crosshair, it's going to create a little button for me. And now what I can do is give it a name. I'm going to call it View Record. Right? Now, above this, we have a couple of choices. Do you want it to just be an icon? Do you want it to be an icon with a label? This label here. Do you want the icon with the label above and to the right, to the left? In this case, I think just for fun, let's do icon, display icon on the left. And then here is your list, a bunch of icons you could choose from, right? So in our case, we're going to use this one right here. It just looks like a circle with a silhouette in it, right? So that's the icon we've chosen. We can adjust the size, make it a little bit bigger here by just clicking this. And then we need to assign it an action. And the action we're going to assign it is a single step. It's going to do one thing and one thing only. And what it's going to do here under button action is it's going to go to layout. We're going to choose go to layout as an option. I just started typing and there it appears. And the question here, you'll see that we have brackets. And the question is, well, which layout do you want to choose from? If I click on that, it gives me the option to choose any layouts that I've created. And I'm going to choose the record view layout that we started with. Right? Now, if you want to really get really fancy, you can do little animations, flip from right, just for grins, we'll do that. Okay? So now, we've created a button, we've assigned it to do something when we click on it, and then just for the user's sake, we're going to change that cursor. In other words, when I hover over it with my mouse, it's going to change it to a hand over the button so people know it's an active button. All right? Okay, so we have all that set up. We can close this out. I'm going to resize my button, just to make it just a little bit bigger. And now I'm going to go into browse mode. Now notice what happens when I hover over this button, that the pointer changes from an arrow to a hand. Now when I click view record, whichever record I'm on at the moment, it should go to that specific record. So I'm going to click and see how active that Gary Cheeseball's record is active. Now when I click view record, it should go to the record view and then with Gary Cheeseball's information in it. Click it, and there it is. Pretty cool. Now, watch what happens if I go into layout mode. If I want to get back to my list view, I'm going to create a button, and I'm going to call that button List view. I'm going to set it up with an icon on the left. And the icon I think I'll choose is this one like that. I'm going to single step, and I'm going to go to layout, and I want to go to the list view layout that I created. Again, I can change the animation here if I want to. Flip from left. Change cursor to hand over button. I go into browse mode, Command B, and test out our button. Takes me back and forth between those two objects, or those two layouts, excuse me. All right, so what I would like for you to do now is basically build your database out the way I just showed you. We're going to have you add a layout called list view. We're going to have you add 2 buttons and script each of those buttons to do 2 different things. I want you to add a layout, name of the layout here at the top of your list view of students, and do the same for your record view layout. So give it a name. Record view. Pretty it up, make it look nice. Okay? So that's your task. Once you have this done, you're welcome to play around a little bit more with it and see the different things that it can do, layout-wise, design-wise. But that's when you're done with it, what I'd like for you to do is I'd like for you to save a copy of your, or upload a copy of your changed database to Canvas. All right? Have fun.